have to really escalate the noise we make so that we'll be heard.
Welcome to Gay USA. I'm Andy Humm.
I'm Ann Northrup. In the news tonight, yes, I got a haircut. You can weigh in on your opinion.
I like it very much.
Well, I told the woman she made me look like Angie Dickinson, and she said, I don't know who that is. I'll have to Google her.
Well, as they say on the Today Show, on a much more serious note, a young lesbian couple was shot in Portland, Texas. One of them is dead, and the other is in critical but stable condition. The perpetrator is at large.
Terrible story. We'll show you their friends and talk about the case. And then we'll show you some extensive coverage of this last weekend's New York City Pride March, the 43rd, with the Grand Marshal Cyndi Lauper, a lesbian couple, and a gay businessman.
Bill Ballman, our associate producer, and I were out there. I don't know how long we can do this, folks. We need reinforcements. We're going to hear from political leaders at the march. Senator Chuck Schumer tells us about the prospects for the Employment Non-Discrimination Act. City Council Speaker Christine Quinn takes on the school's chancellor of New York. Outgoing Senator Tom Dwayne says what he's most proud of. And Assembly member Danny O'Donnell explains New York's new cyber-bullying bill. Law, actually, now.
And that lesbian mom who was a troop leader for the Boy Scouts and got fired showed up at the New York parade with Star Trek star George Takei. And they're teaming up to tell us when they believe the Boy Scouts are going to drop the ban on gay scouts and scoutmasters. And
I also spoke to an old friend, a veteran gay activist, Steve Ashkenazi. He was the first social worker at the Hedrick Martin Institute where we worked. And he lamented the direction of our movement. We'll hear what he has to say.
And a footnote to Pride at the White House, some LGBT activists acting up a little inappropriately. We'll show you that picture.
And you've heard of a group called Go Proud. They barely exist, but they endorsed George Romney. George Romney, Mitt Romney.
Wishful thinking.
But George Romney wasn't so bad.
As I say, I'm nostalgic for Nixon.
And I like George Romney, the painter, also.
Yeah, well, and in other Republican news, Mary Cheney and her partner Heather Poe got married in D.C., and that's an important point. We'll elaborate.
The last known gay Jewish survivor of the Holocaust, Gad Beck, has died.
And a terrible news story from South Africa, where a transgender pageant winner was found brutally murdered.
Alan Turing, the gay man who broke the Nazi code for the Allies in World War II and won it for us, may not actually have committed suicide. There is some doubt about that.
Being talked about because we just celebrated his 100th birthday. LGBT Pride was celebrated around the world with the help of U.S. embassies everywhere, including for the first time in Laos. We have a couple of pictures from a viewer there.
Actually, a listener.
Okay.
Singer Frenchie Davis has come out.
Another Stop the Presses moment?
Oh, well, you know.
We're always happy.
We welcome everyone.
But I don't think you're going to be very welcoming to the play 3C,
we'll see.
You saw.
You're going to have to wait for my one-word review.
And other notes as we go along. But really, a horrible story to start the news. In Texas, a teenage lesbian couple. Wait a minute.
Their names are Judith Olgen, 19.
Molly Judith Olgen, 19, yep. And Mary Christine Chapa, 18. Happy couple, been together for 5 months, were known in the community, out, proud.
Shot in the head, both of them. One of them dead, one of them survived, and that's what this report is about, and about how their friends are trying to cope with this horrible, horrible thing.
Here's the local news report.
Friends of teenagers Molly Olgen and Mary Christine Chapa gathered at Ingleside High School to process the mix of emotions running through their heads and hearts.
Angry and shocked shocked and confused and worried.
On Saturday, this group of teens learned of the terrifying discovery some visitors stumbled upon at a Portland park. Police say Molly Olgin and her girlfriend, Mary Christine Chapa, were found in a grassy area. They say Chapa was rushed to the hospital with a gunshot wound to her head. They say Olgin also appeared to have been shot, but she didn't survive.
Someone you always hear they never did anything wrong. Why was it them? They were so innocent, but Molly and Christine were innocent.
Samantha Garrett is Olgin's roommate. She and Stephanie Chasick, who worked with Olgin at Taco Bell, can't begin to understand why someone would target their dear friends. They say the girls never attracted any negative attention for their relationship, which started 5 months ago.
I've been trying to think of anyone that I know that would actually want to harm them for any reason, especially for them being a couple, and not one person has ever come to mind.
Friends of the couple say both girls constantly exuded love and laughter. The pair always got a kick out of playing jokes on their friends, and they loved eating their favorite food, chicken wings. Garrett says the reality that her roommate is gone hasn't quite set in.
I know that it's going to be really hard this next week whenever I have to walk past her room, whenever I'm moving all my stuff out. So it's definitely going to be weird.
For now, she and her friends are trying to focus their energy on prayers that Chapa makes a full recovery. Lindsay Curtis, KRIS 6 News.
Absolutely heartbreaking, and here we are celebrating Pride and Progress, as this show used to be called, and there's so much work to be done if that kind of hatred is still in the world.
Well, it is in the world, and we hope that Mary Christine Chapa does survive. She has indicated that there was an attacker. There were some online who were saying, was this a murder-suicide? No, it certainly does not appear to be that. It appears to be someone who attacked them, and probably because of being offended at them being an out lesbian couple.
And being in love.
Yes, so we will give you further developments as they develop. There will be vigils around the country for them, including one in Washington, D.C. this Friday night at DuPont Circle. You may or may not hear about that before you see this, but we will continue to follow this story.
So we went out to the 43rd LGBT Pride March in New York and did some coverage. We can start with our B-roll here as we talk about it.
Very grateful to associate producer Bill Ballman, who shot and edited this footage and is a trooper for going out there with you to do it. And we start with some sound bites from the grand marshals of the parade this year, starting with the great gay friend Cyndi Lauper,
who runs the True Colors Foundation
for homeless LGBT youth.
That if you reach out to the families and the parents and you give them support, any kind of support, these kids will not run away out of fear or rejection or beating or whatever, because you're bringing the families together. Senator Carey has put forth a bill, the Reconnecting Families bill, and it is based on a study that was done in San Francisco, and it works. And we intend to try and get these kids off the street and back to living a productive, normal life. So I thank you for supporting the True Colors Fund. We're going to work this year really hard to educate people on what's going on with the kids, and I'm going to advocate for them. And today we're going to celebrate. So I hope you have a great day. I have to run and do rainbows on my fingernails. I don't know. So I love you all. Thank you for supporting today. Remember, it's about celebrating and celebrating together as New Yorkers. I love you, and let's share the love.
Congratulations. And what does it feel like, and what's your message to the community today?
Keep on trucking, keep on doing what you're doing and do more of it, and it's wonderful to be married.
What do you want to see happen that hasn't happened yet?
Everybody to be married.
Chris, congratulations on being Grand Marshal. You got to move here. What's your message to the community today?
Everybody come out. This is about being together. You're not alone. There's millions of people just like you. Come on, New York Pride. Let's make it happen.
What do you want to see happen that hasn't happened for us yet?
I want to see us to have all the rights that we're entitled to across this country in every single state.
And there they were. And that the older woman there was Phyllis Siegel, who was the first person to get married in New York, with Connie Kopilov, her long-term partner. They were also Grand Marshals.
And, of course, because it's a pride parade, there were a lot of politicians there.
We didn't used to allow them to speak at our rallies in the early marches, since they weren't doing very much for us, but now they're gay.
You can't keep them away.
Well,
so
not everyone we talk to.
We're very happy to see 3 out of 4 we're going to hear from are lesbian and gay, so that's good for our representation.
So we're going to hear from Chris Quinn, Chuck Schumer, Tom Dwayne, and Danny O'Donnell in this segment.
All right, I'm talking to my council member, the Speaker of the City Council, Christine Quinn. All right, last year, the huge celebration for marriage. What do we have to be proud of this year?
Well, we have a lot to be proud of. We can be very proud that on July 24th of last year, marriage equality was implemented with no missteps, and that the city clerk's office has done an outstanding job in the 11 months since then, and we're seeing lots of LGBT people exercise their rights and have their families recognized. Now, that said, we still have work to do. We have to get gender passed, and we have to get rights for transgender people in New York. But we should be very grateful that our years of effort have led the President of the United States, for the first time ever, a sitting president, to say he supports marriage equality and he will not defend the Defense of Marriage Act. That's a remarkable thing for a president to say he will not have his Department of Justice defend a law of the United States. So today I hope people feeling so gratified that the work that we saw get voted on last year has now been implemented and has even further ripples with the statement of President Obama.
So, but yes, lots of progress. But a fifth grader in Queens could not give an essay on, on same-gender marriage to his grade school class. If someone else were mayor, would they allow that to stand? That you couldn't talk about gay issues in elementary school?
You know, I think that student should have been allowed to make that speech, and we've actually invited him to come to the City Council in July to give it to the City Council. And I think that was clearly a mistake by that principal and a mistake by the Department of Education. But, you know, even though we have a lot of work to do, even though our schools aren't bullying free, even though discrimination isn't gone, even though we don't have gender or even gay rights in the federal level, it's good to take a day and be proud and be happy and pat yourself on the back and re-energize your battery for the struggles that continue. So today is about happiness and love and family and the success that we've had and how that success is going to carry us forward to the point where talking about marriage equality is like the ABCs in fifth grade.
Well, it's great to be here.
Happy Christopher Street Liberation Day to you.
Thank you.
And it's tough down there in Washington. What's going to turn it around?
Well, what's going to turn it around is actually the people. The people are ahead of the politicians. The number of people who are for gay marriage is exceeding the number who are against it in large parts of the country. So we're working state by state, but I think we have a decent chance at repeal of DOMA next year, too.
And are you planning on getting a vote on the Employment Non-Discrimination Act in the Senate this year?
Yes, we would like to get it done this year. Again, we used to have a few Republicans who were with us. Let's hope we can get them back.
Senator Tom Dwayne stepping down after this year. In all your years, and you've been a city council member as well and an activist.
Yes.
What are you most proud of?
Well, Dignity for All Students Act in the state, because it includes protections based on gender identity and also body. You're not allowed to. It helps to teach kids not to make fun of kids because of their bodies.
My brother was a fat kid. He says you never. I'm a fat person now, but he says you never forget how they treated you.
I had weight stuff myself, right. and I think. Can you imagine being an overweight gay kid? the hardest. Or anyway, so and I did a bill for older people that includes transgender, and I'm very proud of that. So at least I got transgender into law, and I am leaving gender on the table, but it'll get
Danny
done.
O'Donnell, you got your cyberbullying bill added to the anti-bullying bill. What does that mean?
Well, it's a great thing. I mean, it's been a great change in the last decade on how people interact. And so it's all done on the computers now. We believe that dignity always was connected to cyberbullying because it leads to conduct in schools. But this new expansion makes that explicit and does so in a way that's respectful of the Second Circuit court cases.
Right. So how does it work? How does it have an impact on cyberbullying?
The Second Circuit has said there's a two-part test that has to be determined, whether or not it's likely to lead to a substantial disruption to school and is likely to get back to the school, then schools are allowed to do something about it. Doesn't mandate any particular conduct. It just allows the schools to interact around bullying.
There's a new interesting report on bullying from the Gay Straight Alliances Network that says that schools and authorities are being too harsh on bullies, that that is not a way to stop bullying, and that we really have to examine the punitive ways we're going after bullies.
The way to stop bullying, and Frank Jump, who's a teacher in the New York City schools, an old friend of ours, the way they do it is they teach tolerance and respect every day. They create a culture of respect. The kids who go to his school, they don't want to leave. Imagine that. They love going to school. That's what you've got to do.
Well, if you want to read this new report, you can go to the gsanetwork.org, the bullying report at gsanetwork.org, where you can read about whether we are treating bullies too harshly and being counterproductive.
And also during the march, we got to meet two of our heroes, Jennifer Terrell, who was the lesbian mom who was thrown out of the Boy Scouts. She was running a scout troop for being a lesbian, and George Takei, who has been out there for us a lot, as of course you know him from Star Trek, and we saw them both in their uniforms on Pride.
Is there a realistic chance that the Boy Scouts are finally going to drop this opposition to gay and lesbian scout leaders and scouts? Realistic?
There's always a chance. Currently, we have over 300,000 signatures on our change.org/scouts petition. We have amazing people like Mr. Takei supporting us, Mr. Obama. And we're going to do it. We're going to do it.
Wasn't President Obama the head of the Scouts titularly?
The executive of Ernst & Young is on the board of the Boy Scouts, and he says it's going to change. It will change. We're confident of it.
Will change.
Thank you for both your great work.
Like your confidence.
And finally in this section, our old colleague from the Hetrick Martin Institute, social worker Steve Ashkenazi. Andy talked to him about what he thinks of where the movement is these days, because he's a veteran activist.
Some of the things that surprised me about the direction that the movement has taken is that people are becoming so assimilated. I think that people are forgetting that being gay and lesbian is something special, and people want to be like everybody else instead of celebrating that we are different.
So how do we get them back? Well, this parade is pretty diverse. People are pretty flamboyant on this day.
This is very flamboyant day. And I think it actually takes both points of view, because the fact that we've moved to the middle has allowed a lot of people to come out that wouldn't have come out before, that didn't come out before, that were afraid to come out before. And now, once people are out, I think it's easier to celebrate what also makes us different.
Yes.
So last week we told you about the Pride reception at the White House. Hundreds of people, everybody very happy, President giving a great speech.
Controversial marriage proposal on videotape.
Yes, from Dr. Scout of the Fenway Project, proposing to his lesbian girlfriend. But there was some other little thing taking place behind the scenes that has become a footnote to this that was fairly ugly.
Well, we'll put the picture up. They have portraits of ex-presidents up there. So the people on either side, on the right and the left, two Philadelphians, decided to give the finger to Ronald Reagan, who was a monster and perpetrator of the AIDS crisis in the United States of America. In the middle there is Mark Siegel, also of Philadelphia. He's not giving the finger to George Bush. He's sort of making a sarcastic thumbs up. But this has been a source of embarrassment to the White House. Look, I have to say, Reagan deserves everything you can give him. If you take pictures like this, what you might want to do is just show it to your friends and not put it on Facebook. But we can disagree about that.
We can, but I wasn't crazy about seeing that. I would rather.
Listen, when Ronald Reagan died, I was brought on television to condemn him, and that's what he deserves.
All right. Well, and in other gay Republican news, Go Proud.
What is that?
That is the far right-wing conservative gay group.
Oh,
now, people think being gay and conservative is an oxymoron.
Oh, no.
I don't. There's a substantial conservative gay population. There is always 25 to 33% of self-identified gay people who vote Republican.
Yes, there are.
We are everywhere. We are everyone.
I will not be defined by my sexuality, but Go Proud is supposedly a gay group, but they don't give a damn about gay rights.
No.
And that's what they say, well, on balance, we're for Romney because, we care about other things.
Full speed ahead.
We care about other things.
And they say they will commit significant resources because Romney will fix the disastrous, failed Obama economy.
Please.
They will have a large presence at the Republican National Convention. Good luck. CPAC would not let you in.
Are they giving you a speaking spot?
And then it turns out they have a 7-member board, 4 of whom
They have 7 members, period.
That
what
too.
do you mean they have a 7-member board?
They have 4 gay members and 3 straight members.
And Coulter, one of them?
And the endorsement vote was 2 gay, 2 straight. And
why are we talking about this? It's a man bites dog story.
Well, what I have figured out is they just, I know why they call themselves conservative. I don't know why they call themselves gay.
Because they're perverse.
I think it just makes
They
no
like
sense
sticking
to me.
it to the liberal gay establishment. That's what their main purpose is.
On a more liberal gay Republican note, Mary Cheney and Heather Poe got married, and they live in Virginia, and they went to the District of Columbia to get married.
Why do you think? Well, they're not liberals, of course.
No,
and neither is Mary's daddy.
No, and that is why we know that
Prince
same-sex
of America.
marriage is a nonpartisan, equal opportunity issue. And they have 2 children, both of whom Mary gave birth to. And when they go back to their house in Virginia, they will still have no rights because the state and the federal government do not recognize their marriage.
Right. And P.S., marriage is a very conservative issue.
But Dick and Lynn are very pleased for them.
And speaking of conservatives who now support same-sex marriage, David Blankenhorn, who was the star witness at the Prop 8 trial for the other side.
Well, there were only 2.
Oh. Well, the other guy was really something.
Excuse me, he was disqualified as a witness by the judge, who said that he was more a commentator than a researcher and not cogent in his arguments.
Well, he was there. But the point is, he's a big marriage maven, or fancies himself such. And, but he gives this real backhanded endorsement now to same-sex marriage, while saying, I'm not giving up on any of my beliefs that you need a mom and a dad and all that kind of stuff. But, so that's where it is now. Anyway, another quarter heard from.
Yes. All right. In other marriage news, there was that awful study funded by the right wing that came out of the University of Texas a couple of weeks ago that looked at, long-term heterosexual married couples raising children versus anyone else you want to throw into the pot, and found that, long-term married couples,
It turns out to have been written in a very corrupt process.
Well, in the less corrupt, in fact, not at all corrupt, highly respectable National Longitudinal Lesbian Family Study, which has been going on for 26 years, following actual families headed by lesbian couples, which has a 78%, it's more than that. 78 couples. It has like an 85% retention rate in this. They looked at the 17-year-old children of these couples, gay and straight, and they found that 17-year-olds with and without male role models were equally well-adjusted and equally fulfilled gender stereotypes, both males and females. Right. And this is real research, not the junk that came out of the University of Texas. In other relationship news, a woman in Westchester County, New York, who is married to her partner, works for a Catholic hospital in Westchester, St. Joseph's Medical Center, which, like many such institutions, is self-insured and therefore subject to federal insurance rules, and has the choice of whether or not to offer insurance to same-sex couples. And they do not, because they're Catholic, because they're under federal rules,
very
whatever.
mean.
So this woman, this lesbian employee, under the name Jane Rowe, she doesn't want to be identified, is suing the hospital as challenging DOMA, challenging the right of the hospital to not offer the benefits because they're governed by federal rules.
She wants to violate their religious liberty to stomp on
Well,
her?
what's interesting about this is that it really is a DOMA challenge. It's not a religious freedom challenge. And so the fact that it's a Catholic hospital is almost incidental to this. It's about the federal rules for insurance coverage.
ERISA laws.
Yes, exactly. Right. Good news in immigration news. The Board of Immigration Appeals has overruled the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services on behalf of 4 same-sex couples, binational couples. And what the Board of Immigration Appeals has said is that the Citizenship and Immigration Services must evaluate these couples and their marriages, because they're all legally married, same-sex, binational couples, must evaluate their marriages for whether they would be eligible for immigration rights if there were no DOMA. Fascinating.
Good. And speaking of which, 30 LGBT and HIV/AIDS organizations really came down on this immigration decision from the Supreme Court, this partial decision in the Arizona case, and it's it's the "show me your papers" ruling. It was that trimmed them somewhat, but obviously not enough. And it's good again to see LGBT groups, which we're always asking for support from everybody else. And La Raza just endorsed same-sex marriage this week.
National Council of La Raza unanimously supported marriage equality and will join a national LGBT rights campaign along with 21 Hispanic organizations.
So that means if we ask for support, we have to give support in return.
And if you are a binational couple seeking immigration rights for the non-U.S. member, you can go to stopthedeportations.com for information. They're the ones who won these cases so far for the 4 couples that got the good ruling from the Board of Immigration.
Go to Immigration Equality also for information about that.
Thank you to Susie Orman, who devoted her show this last weekend in honor of Pride Week to marriage equality. Had a lesbian couple on at the top of the show discussing their financial situation.
She is a lesbian.
She is, and she's quite out about it.
Yes.
But really pays it off on a regular basis in ways that others who are out do not always do. Bad news from Maryland, where the right wing has submitted more signatures and has probably reached critical mass now to get the referendum on the ballot in November to stop the marriage equality law there. And in Illinois, we've been wondering who was going to step up to defend their state law against same-sex marriage, and now we have a couple of candidates. The Alliance Defense Fund, on behalf of the Illinois Family Institute, and the Thomas More Society, which is the thing started by the old Domino's Pizza.
Every time you eat a Domino's pizza.
Now, he sold the company years ago.
Yes, he did. They do anything for
I don't know whether he's still getting money from them. But the interesting thing will be whether they have standing to defend the law.
Right. Well, really, we shouldn't be talking about any of this because the Southern Baptists have, are trying to teach us that gay rights are not civil rights. They really laid it on this week. I mean, on the one hand, they get their first African-American president, and then they go ahead and say it is regrettable that homosexual rights activists and those who are promoting the recognition of same-sex marriage have misappropriated the rhetoric of the civil rights movement. And they go on and on and on and on. One of their pastors, another African-American, said they're equating their sin with my skin.
You know, we had a letter, a very well-researched, extensive letter from a viewer in Philadelphia who wants us to fight fire with fire more with these religious arguments and go after them on their Bible quotes. And it's a very appealing approach, but the fact is that they are hypocrites, and they are never going to be convinced logically on the basis of the Bible, and that the Bible condemns everything else too, and we are being singled out, or whatever argument you want to make. It just doesn't work.
No, you can't be rational when you're fighting irrationality. I know for some religious people this is the biggest truth in your life, but there's a lot of irrationality associated with it, and it's very hard to argue with.
But Catholic activists have started a new campaign and want people to wear yellow ribbons to church on Sunday in support of Catholics for Equality and Social Justice. So look for those yellow ribbons in Catholic churches.
Right. We learned of a horrible Navy hazing case this week. That what happened? The case happened a while ago.
Before repeal of Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Right. But it has led this week. This was down at Kings Bay, Georgia-based USS Florida. They hazed this guy for a long time. So finally, they're firing the top enlisted officer who was aboard that nuclear submarine, which was, they just really just tormented this guy for months and months and months. He thought of committing suicide and that kind of stuff, but he kept putting up with it, trying to suck it up, hoping it would stop, and it didn't.
Well, Liza Friedlander in Queens, New York, got a monetary settlement for some hazing and battering. She was actually violently attacked at a Sizzler restaurant.
I think she got $25,000.
She got $25,000 in a consent decree. She was gay bashed by the manager and customers, and I was trying to make some sense of this story, like what happened that she was suddenly attacked, but there doesn't seem to be any real precipitating event. There's some question about the bill or something, but she ended up bruised, battered, and hospitalized, and has now gotten a settlement of $25,000.
Better news from Denver, where the Sheriff's Department will, in January, I don't know what they're waiting for, roll out new policies regarding transgender inmates, relating to their booking and their housing and how they're treated and the whole thing. Most trans inmates now are placed in solitary confinement 23 hours a day, get out for a little, and now they're going to mix them for some of the recreational things and get them have contact with some other human beings.
We've heard similar stories from California, LA, and from New York. It would be nice to think they're treating people more humanely, but I'm not holding my breath on that. But better news from Arizona, where the State Bar Association has just elected a lesbian president, Amelia Craig Kramer, who's the chief deputy attorney of Pima County, which is Tucson. She's originally from California and then was in Boston for a long time, was the former executive director of Gay and Lesbian Advocates and Defenders, which is the great legal group there, and then moved to Arizona and has been active there, is highly, highly respected, and is going to be the president of the Bar Association.
Right. We keep hearing from a viewer in Jacksonville, Florida, asking us to pay more attention to the big fight there for the civil rights ordinance down there. It's being debated. They're having hearings.
It's being voted this week, I think, but after we tape, so we'll give you results as we get them.
As we get them.
And there are a lot of primaries
around
the country today as we tape. Again, results next week.
Yep.
So we will move to international news, which we know more about.
Yeah.
First of all, we are mourning the death of Gad Beck,
We have a picture of him there.
He was an amazing activist. First of all, he was the last known gay Jewish survivor of the Holocaust. He was almost 89 years old. He had been a resistance fighter in the Holocaust. He once dressed up as a Hitler Youth to try to free his lover.
Went into a deportation camp to get him. His partner's name was Manfred Lewin, and Mr. Lewin refused to be separated from his family and was later deported to Auschwitz and killed there.
Beck became a gay activist. He's profiled prominently in the movie Paragraph 175.
And there's also a film called The Life of Gad Beck.
Yeah. He is survived by his partner of 35 years, Julius Laufer. Really highly recommend seeing Paragraph 175.
Yes. He emigrated to Israel back in 1947, but he returned to Germany when they gave him a job as the director of Jewish Adult Education Center in Berlin.
Yeah. An amazing guy. Now, we also this week marked the 100th birthday of Alan Turing, who was the British man who broke the Nazi code.
Which won the war.
Yes.
And he was also really essentially the inventor of the computers as we know them.
Yep.
I mean, every time you use a computer. And, you know, the story on him was that he was caught for homosexuality when it was still illegal in the early 50s. And they gave him a choice of either imprisonment or estrogen treatment. Like, that was, what was that going to do for him?
Well, they call it medical castration.
Yeah, but I mean, it was insane. I mean, like a psychiatrist friend of mine said, why don't they give him testosterone? I mean, whatever, if they, you know, none of it made any sense. But
because they're trying to lower the testosterone so that he no longer has a sex drive.
And not make a man out of him in that sense. I'm just saying it was all screwy in those days.
Well, that was the common solution.
Completely screwy. But whatever, the point is, you know, he was persecuted, even though he was a national hero. And the story was that he committed suicide by eating a cyanide-laced apple. And somebody looked at the coroner's report and said this was extremely cursory. There's no evidence of ingestion of cyanide.
They never examined the apple. They just found an apple by his bed and decided that's what happened.
And he may have died because he had a lab right next to his bedroom, a little lab, where some cyanide gas was released, and that could have poisoned him, and he could have died in his sleep for that reason.
Fumes.
But the point is, you know, look, you know, he certainly was persecuted, but if the guy didn't commit suicide, you know, I mean, I think we need to know that and you know, not treat, because they said he wasn't unhappy, he was planning his life and all that other kind of stuff. So, Alan Turing.
All right. Uganda is threatening to take up the Kill the Gays bill again, threatening to close 38 gay-friendly non-governmental organizations.
Well, wait a minute. I got a note just before I came here that the ethics minister said that they will not discriminate against people of a different orientation or harass people who want to meet. Now, of course, that may just be an inducement to get you to meet so they can round you up. I'd be a little suspicious at this point.
Do you know that the Catholic bishops and Anglicans there are supporting the Kill the Gays bill?
No, I did not.
There's a charmer.
Well, I left the Catholic Church a long time ago.
In China, an 84-year-old woman has come out as transgender. Jian Jinfan, who knows whether I'm pronouncing that anywhere close to correctly, 84 years old, started living as a woman at 80 years old, had surgery at 82, even though she knew when she was 3 years old that she was...
Better late than never.
Exactly. She's a former government official, a calligrapher, an art critic, so this is big news in China.
Horrible, horrible news from South Africa, where Talipo Makutle, 23, who was a former winner of the Miss Gay pageant, had throat slit, murdered, and genitals stuffed in mouth, brutal, you know, send a message kind of a killing.
Transgender.
Transgender, identified as gay, and recently started calling herself, I guess, at this point, transgender. It's always very hard with the pronouns in these stories because they don't. But this, you know, so here's a country with protections in the Constitution on the basis of sexual orientation, and this is the kind of stuff that still happens there. So even when you get the laws, You got a long way to go.
And without the laws, in Kiev, Ukraine, a gay activist there was attacked violently, kicked in the head, had his jaw broken, concussion. Second time he's been attacked. This was after they had canceled the scheduled May 20th Pride celebration there because of threats of violence. So that's in Kiev, Ukraine.
Now, we've told you about, you've all heard about the International Day Against Homophobia, which is May 17th every year, and that's an organization that is ongoing. And when the main purpose of Idaho is to fight against the criminalization of homosexuality around the world. In many, many countries, still, it's against the laws. Some places, they still want to put you to death for it. So Louis Georges, who is the head of it, says he had talked to the new president of France, Hollande, and was assured that he was going to bring this up at a UN thing and and make it a big issue.
Submit a UN resolution for the universal decriminalization of homosexuality. And he wants, Tam regards this as an emergency because he needs U.S. support for this, and if the Republicans win in November, he sees this as all going down the drain.
So, because Hollande is not now responding to him, he is going on a hunger strike over
He
this.
and two of his fellow activists have started a hunger strike in France to demand that the new French president submit this promised
And this
UN
is the
resolution.
new supposedly pro-gay socialist, government. And he says the attitude of French politicians on this issue is full of cowardice and cruelty. Our souls are bleak and determined altogether.
We'll see what happens there. In other depressing news, in Thessaloniki, northern Greece, the Pride Parade there was attacked by 50 demonstrators throwing eggs and bottles of water. They don't like us in a lot of these places.
But, right, and it's hard to celebrate Pride in a lot of these places. But while we have this gay president, Barack Obama, as Newsweek says, our embassies are helping with the Pride celebrations.
Amazing.
So a viewer, Gerard Dewar, sent us a note and says he's been working there for a while, listens to our
in Laos
podcast, right, in how do you say it? Vientiane. Vientiane. And they had it at the embassy there. And we have some pictures of the celebration there at the U.S. Embassy in Laos to celebrate Pride. The main organizer of it was Anand Bwapa, was the primary organizer. So it was,
150 Laos there and representatives of 8 organizations. They held a ceremony called Proud to Be Us, celebrating sexual diversity. The U.S. ambassador to Laos spoke at the ceremony. There was also a U.S. Embassy-sponsored Pride celebration in Nairobi, Kenya, with a very moving speech by the U.S. ambassador to Kenya. A lot of activity under Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton as Secretary of State to make U.S. embassies around the world very proactive on LGBT rights.
And if only we could get the Ecuadorian embassy to take in Julian Assange. By the way, there were a lot of Bradley Manning delegations and Pride parades around the country supporting him. He sure needs it.
And in Great Britain, at the Queen's birthday honors, one of the people who became a member of the British Empire is transgender activist April Ashley, 77 years old. She's famous for helping achieve legal equality for transgender people in 2005 and marched right up to the Queen, I guess, and got her honors.
Yes.
And a newspaper in Ethiopia says that giving scholarships to Ethiopians to the U.S. and Europe is a ruse to export gay back to Ethiopia.
Oi.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's move on to AIDS news.
Well, another thing I saw on the Pride March was the ACT UP float, which emphasized the whole thing about fighting criminalization of HIV.
HIV is not a crime.
Right, and that's been happening more and more, and I'm glad they drew attention to that.
Well, this is the Zero Project put together by Sean Strub and others that is trying to really get rid of these laws across the country that criminalize people with HIV, basically for existing, but certainly for having sex of any kind. And it's an talked about problem, but a real problem for a lot of people who are getting arrested and thrown in jail.
A new report has come out from the Global Commission on Drug Policy saying that the war on drugs is the main reason for the continuing HIV/AIDS epidemic around the world. That aggressive law enforcement targets drug users and doesn't, treat, them,
drives them away from treatment
and everything else. I mean, everything is so wrong-headed. You want to know why you have this. There was also a similar letter about stop and frisk in the Times from an expert in the field saying all the stopping and frisking that you do, the criminalization of African American and Latino youth leads to more stress and a very heightened rate of heart attack in that community for this reason, because you treat them like crap. I think we need to raise that with the mayor, who is so concerned about our health with his obesity fight and all that kind of stuff, and anti-smoking crusades. What about that?
It doesn't make for good relations in the community either when you treat everyone like a criminal.
Well, I tried to talk to Commissioner Ray Kelly, New York City Police Commissioner, at the Pride March about stop and frisk, and said, I heard that you're going to modify it, and all he did was defend it.
Of course.
Well,
why aren't we just booing him all the way down the route in the Pride March? All right, back to AIDS news. July International AIDS Conference in D.C. We've told you about people who can't get here from other countries because they're sex workers or drug users. But there will be people there in July doing a number of things, including protesting criminalization of HIV. But there's in anticipation of this, the Washington Blade, which is the great long-standing LGBT newspaper in Washington, looked at the statistics on HIV and AIDS in D.C. currently and found new infections are down steadily over the last 5 years, including among men having sex with men. Deaths down. And that people are getting connected to treatment when they're diagnosed. So,
Good.
A little ray of sunshine.
I mean, this show is coming on after National HIV Testing Day.
Yes. But in honor of National HIV Testing Day, the Centers for Disease Control announced that they are making available at selected drugstores in 24 cities and rural communities free 20-minute mouth swab HIV tests. Now,
that means you get your results in 20 minutes.
Yes. If you test positive on this 20-minute mouth swab
They don't make an announcement over the PA system. Don't worry.
In fact, they take you into a private room, which is nice, and they then say, go get a blood test to confirm this. Don't rely just on
Very
these
important
results.
to get tested. So many people find out that they're HIV positive when they're very far along, and it's harder to get well.
And speaking of important, they're really pushing this circumcision bit in Africa. This is based on sort of major studies of large populations that men who are circumcised are less likely to acquire or transmit HIV.
They were doing it in Parliament somewhere.
They're doing it in Zimbabwe because Robert Mugabe said he's worried that some of his political allies are dying of AIDS.
Oh.
So the legislators all went in and got circumcised. With pictures.
There was an anti-circumcision contingent in the Pride March this year.
One even allowed photographers in to snap pictures of his bandage.
So, did we talk about the HRC study on hospitals and things? You can go to hrc.org. They studied hospitals across the country, about how they treat us. And Christine Quinn, who is the speaker here, we showed you earlier, said out of the 60 state hospitals in New York, only 8 participated in the study.
Really?
Yes. And
were they all supposed to, or was it a random survey?
No, it's not a random survey. They wanted everybody to fill it out.
Wow.
All right.
All right, moving on to entertainment news. Well, as predicted on the Gay USA television show last week, the International Olympic Committee, in anticipation of the Olympics, although not in force for this year's games, has issued its new policy on sex testing of women athletes, female athletes. Kevin B. Walmsley, a professor of sport history at the University of Western Ontario, who has written about the issue of sex testing in sports, called the new policy a farce. No matter what they call it, it's still a sex test that's all about judgments and so much more about social values than science. They don't need this test, and I think they should get rid of it. They're testing testosterone levels in women. Now, why don't they test for basketball players and who's taller and shorter? Why don't they, this is ridiculous.
Can't we all play together?
Exactly. Can't we all? So this is really obnoxious, and it's going to fail, and it's just a way to
It's a lie, it's a sham, it won't work.
Here's someone else. Rebecca Jordan Young, an associate professor of women's gender and sexuality studies at Barnard College, said the new regulations were an unsuccessful attempt by the IOC to address an issue that is more complicated than the rules suggest. The problem here isn't unfair advantage. The problem is the misperception and bias against people who are not gender conforming. Hear, hear.
Well, let's get that picture of Frenchie
Davis.
Frenchie Davis up there. Speaking of gender nonconforming.
Former American Idol contestant kicked off for appearing on a porn website.
Well, an outlaw. But now she says, "I'm in love with a woman, and I think I can be who I think I can be with forever." And she's out, and she was performing at the Chicago Pride Fest this past weekend. Did not disclose her girlfriend's name. She has toured twice with Ruben Studdard, who you remember won the second thing.
Armistead Maupin and his husband are moving to Santa Fe, New Mexico for more space and some nature and a different magic. He calls it an autumnal adventure with new dreams. He has a new book coming out, The Days of Anna Madrigal.
Anna Madrigal.
Yeah.
A man and a girl, if you rearrange the letters, although when he wrote it, he didn't realize that that's what it was. Did you realize that? Anyway, put up the picture of 3C. This was a play I saw at the Rattlestick. Looks kind of interesting. It's sort of based on
Three's Company.
It's based on Three's Company. But I have a one-word review for it. Torture. If you want to read a positive review of it, you can go to The New Yorker and read John Lahr's review. I was stultified.
I am always anticipating the new season of Project Runway, but now I'm anticipating it even more because I read this morning that 2 of the next season contestants freak out and leave the show in the middle. I can't wait to see that.
Wow. Apropos of nothing gay, if you come to New York, another cultural institution, a lot of people forget is the Morgan Library, which is absolutely fantastic and free on Friday nights after 7 o'clock.
A lot of museums are free on Friday nights.
Yeah.
MoMA's free on Friday nights.
Is it Friday?
I
don't want to. I'm not sure. I think so. You think you're right. But they have this thing on Churchill.
And you
the
can
power
pay
of
anything
words.
you want at the Met. Don't pay a lot.
Oh, you can pay whatever you want. Give them a penny. They have to let you into the Met.
Yeah.
That's true. It's true of the Museum of the City of New York as well. It's suggested, but they don't emphasize that. You have to know these things. But anyway, check out the Churchill thing. I mean, I wasn't a fan of Churchill because he was a racist dog, but he was certainly a great leader. And wow, was he powerful with words. And that's what the exhibit is about. And you know how they got this picture of Churchill?
No.
They took his cigar away, and he looked mad. Well, I knew that already.
Oh, and late-breaking news. We should have done this somewhere higher in the show, but Lisa Winters, our longtime friend and longtime executive at many organizations, including the Bronx LGBT Community Center, has been arrested and charged with embezzling over $300,000.
Oh, for crying out loud.
Using it for
Shades of
personal
Kelly
purposes.
Conlon over there at the NARAL.
On a happier
Embezzlers.
note, so you and associate producer Bill Ballman, videographer and editor extraordinaire, went to the Pride March, and in addition to all these politicians and grand marshals and everyone else you saw, you ran into a binational couple.
A couple of our viewers.
Yeah, who are viewers. And
we asked them what they were proud of and what they were looking forward to on this day. Should we run their tape?
Let's run their tape.
I'm proud of the opportunity that we have to fight for our rights. I love my partner, and I want to have the opportunity to stay with him here in this country, and I feel like I have this chance now. I have immigration equality here, and these guys are doing amazing work fighting for us.
So you guys are married?
Next week.
Next week. Yeah. Break a leg.
We are.
Thank you.
And, so if they strike down DOMA, as they have been doing in federal court, you could be recognized that way.
That would be a blessing. We are
Supreme Court. It'll be up to the Supreme Court.
Other couples that are here.
So I understand you've watched our show.
Oh yes, I love the show. I love it. I've been I downloaded on my phone the podcast, so I listened to it.
Well, you're very kind to do so, and maybe you'll see yourselves on it now.
Appreciate your show very much.
And thank you for the great work that you guys do.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to us on our podcast.
I think it's always strange to tell viewers and listeners how to see or hear the show because, if you're hearing this, you're already seeing or hearing the show. But it's true that your friends who may not be able to tune into the show if they don't live where it airs can listen to it universally around the world. We got those Laos pictures from an American who has been living and working in Laos for 3 years and listens to the podcast there. And it's on iTunes around the world. All you have to do is search Gay USA on iTunes.
And we are also on Blip TV.
We are now.
But then you can see the video and listen to it as well on Blip TV.
Wherever you are, you are
distributed there by our friends at Free Speech. Somebody else I didn't bring the clip with me, but I interviewed during the march was Brenda Berkman.
Yeah.
She was the first firefighter, had to fight to get in through a lawsuit, and she was marching with Fire Flag. And she said, well, we're making progress. We only had one man who would march with us when we started, a couple of lesbians and one man. And now we have 12 people marching with Fire Flag. There are a lot more out gay cops. I
remember the one guy from the fire department who used to march.
Yes. Well, come on. Bring his name up.
No, I want to say Michael, but
no, we're not.
That's just because all gay men are.
It's embarrassing, especially if you're watching. But Brenda said, how many women are in the fire department now? How many would you guess out of the thousands of firefighters?
I'm going to say 6.
28 total.
Wow.
28 total women in the fire department. It is, and it's still not racially integrated the way it needs to be. The fire department is very resistant to this. I will give Ray Kelly credit for doing much more integration of the police department and recruiting more out LGBT people in the department.
But I feel compelled to remind people that New York City is a very conservative, backwards place in so many ways. Well, and people think this is the great liberal, progressive city, and it just isn't.
We're not the leaders. It did take until 1986 to pass a gay rights bill here, even though we were not us, but this city was the one that thought of the idea of having a gay rights law back in 1971.
And longer to get transgender rights included.
That took until 2002. That's one of the only good things Mike Bloomberg did.
And which we are still fighting for on a state level.
Yes, outrageously. I mean, it hardly even got any attention this year. The attitude of the Republicans in the Senate, we did something, in this session. We did marriage last year. What do you want?
Doesn't that exempt us for another 10 years?
We're not doing another vote.
Yeah. So you were at the Pride Parade. I was not. I was otherwise engaged.
Well, every day is Pride Day for you.
Every single day.
It is.
Yes.
I mean, there are a lot of people who take off, who do this every day, and certainly there's no moral obligation to be there. But let me tell you, the Pride March, it occurs to me, is still the most democratic expression of. It's the open party. Everybody's invited. Everybody can come. There's no admission fee.
Even Ray Kelly.
It's not elite, which is the reason a lot of people don't want to go to it.
And thank you once again to Associate Producer Bill Ballman for getting out there and doing all this work and supporting us. Thank you, Bill. And thank you to all of you, and we'll see you next week.
Bye-bye.